Good evening. Welcome back to the Dusty Feet. It's August 25th, 2026. And of course, we're continuing our journey through this scroll of First Kings in our Outside the Class series. So tonight, we're going to be spending time in chapters 20 and 21. Because at first, these chapters may feel very different. Because one gives us armies, kings, threats, unexpected victories. And the other gives us one man, one vineyard, and a king who just won't accept the word no. But when we place these beside each other, to me, there's a question that begins to form. What does Ahab do with the mercy, the power, and the truth that are placed in his hands? So before we begin, we want to be sure to watch the original Bible Project's overview video, right? The link to that's in the description below. It's also on TheDustyFeet.com. But it gives us the wider aerial view of the Scroll of Kings. And then here we slow down. We notice these people and we try to see the story from where they stood. So let's spend some time with these chapters. See what we notice. At the Dusty Feet, we believe meaningful conversations grow when people have a welcoming place to share, ask questions, listen to one another. There are 4 ways you can connect with us. 1. Visit TheDustyFeet.com. That's our main home for everything that we create. 2. Find us on Substack, where written and spoken reflections give us room to slow down and connect. Link is in the description below. 3. Join us on Facebook at Dusty Feet Journey for comments and discussion. Or 4, you can email me directly at bob@thedustyfeet.com. Wherever you join us, we ask that the conversation remain healthy, respectful, and safe. So, pull up a chair. There's always room for you at the table. Oh, and before we jump back in, if you do find these conversations useful, please click subscribe. But if you know someone who may enjoy exploring these scriptures the same way too, that's when you like these and maybe even share this episode. Because here on the Dusty Feet, we ask a lot of questions. Answers? Sometimes we find them. Sometimes we just carry them for a while, and then sometimes they become really good things to talk about amongst ourselves. Because as chapter 20 opens with Ben-Hadad, the king of Aram, he's surrounding this area of Samaria with a large army. 32 kings have joined him. It's quite an alliance. And then he demands Ahab's silver, his gold, his wives, his children. And at first, Ahab agrees, right? But then Hadad pushes further, right? Give an inch, take a mile. And he tells him his servants, right? They're going to search Ahab's palace and the homes of his officials, and then anything desirable is going to be taken. So Ahab balks finally at that, and he gathers the elders of Israel together. And then for once, he listens to them because they tell him not to agree. So Ahab pushes back. He refuses. So Ben-Hadad now boasts and says that Samaria will now be reduced to dust. And then Ahab's answer, let him not who girds on his armor boast like him who takes it off. Kind of sounds like Old English, doesn't it? In other words, okay, do not celebrate before the battle's even begun, right? Don't count your chickens before they're hatched. And then this unnamed prophet now comes to Ahab. And this prophet, he tells Ahab that Yahweh will deliver the army into his hands. But the reason is clear. So you shall know that I am Yahweh. Because Ahab has not suddenly become faithful. He has not removed the altars of Baal. Yet Yahweh gives Israel the victory. That's mercy. And it's also another opportunity, right, for Ahab to learn to know who Yahweh is. In that battle, Ben-Hadad escapes. And then Ben-Hadad's servants, they explain the loss to him by saying, Israel's gods are the gods of the mountains. So fight them on the plain, they say. Aram will win that battle. Because they imagine Yahweh as a local deity. All deities were there, powerful in one place, limited in others. So, same time next year, right? The armies return. Israel again looks small. The text says that they were like two little flocks of goats while the Arameans had filled the land. And again, a man of God comes to Ahab. He says, now because Aram has said Yahweh is the God of the mountains, but not of the valleys, Yahweh will give Israel the victory. Also, so that you may know that I am Yahweh. Notice, it's not because of anything that Ahab's done. It is because God's reputation is the thing up for discussion here. And yeah, Israel wins again. Ben-Hadad now goes and hides. And then his servants, they come to Ahab, dressed in sackcloth, asking for mercy. And Ahab asks, is he still alive? He is my brother. That word alone should slow us down a little bit. My brother. There's probably a lot more to ponder here. Discuss amongst yourselves. These alliances, they make things very, very messy. But then Ahab calls him out, right? He even calls him up into his chariot. And there, in front of everybody, Ben-Hadad promises to return the cities that his father took, right? This goes back. And to give Ahab trading privileges in Damascus, right? Damascus. Yeah, it's a city that's one of the oldest on the planet. So Ahab makes a covenant with Ben-Hadad, and then he lets him go. I mean, yeah, perhaps it seemed politically useful. Treaty could bring profitable trade, and a living Ben-Hadad might actually become an ally. But Ahab treats the victory as though this were his victory to manage, however he chooses to do this. So on his ride home, there's another unnamed prophet that's going to confront him through an acted story. It's a weird story, probably filled with more questions than answers. But first, this prophet, he belongs to a company of prophets. He asks a man to strike him. And the man, and to be fair, I probably would have done the same as well, refuses. And the prophet says to the man, because you have not obeyed the voice of Yahweh, as soon as you've left me, a lion's going to kill you. Sure enough, when he left, this lion meets him, kills him. So then the prophet asks another man to strike him. He does, black eye and everything. And so now, as the king is riding by, this man cries out. Now he's disguised as a wounded soldier, and he says he was ordered to guard a prisoner on threat of life or silver, but the prisoner had escaped. So then Ahab gives his judgment. So shall your judgment be. You have decided it. The prophet removes his disguise. Ahab now recognizes this man as one of that company of prophets. And Ahab has realized he's judged by his own choice. So then the prophet says to him, "Thus says Yahweh, because you have let the man go whom I had devoted to destruction, therefore your life shall be for his life, and your people for his people." Ahab received a victory meant to reveal Yahweh, and then he'd use it to build his own political arrangement. And now he's brought the ire of God upon himself and the people. So Ahab returns home sullen and angry. We're going to hear those words again, because in chapter 21 it begins with something much smaller than this international war we've been involved with. It's just a vineyard. It belongs to Naboth the Jezreelite, and it sits near Ahab's palace. Ahab can see it. Ahab now wants it. And he offers Naboth a better vineyard, a trade, or he's going to pay it fair cash value. There's also, from a modern real estate perspective, that offer sounds fair. But Naboth is not looking at the land as a property to be sold at the right price. Because he answers, "Yahweh forbid me that I should give you the inheritance of my fathers." The vineyard, it carries a family story. Someone in that family's past planted those vines. Someone in the family's past tended those vines. Someone in the past harvested those vines. His family is invested here. This is a God-given inheritance. And you know, Naboth, right now, he does not know that he is now standing in the middle of one of these very famous Bible stories. The only thing he knows is that the king wants the inheritance entrusted to his family. And he just says no. So Ahab goes home, sullen and angry. Yes, those are the same words used for the prophet when he confronted in chapter 20. Seems things just aren't going his way. So he goes home, lies on his bed, turns his face away, refuses to eat. Ahab, the king, is pouting. He has palaces, servants, armies, wealth, land. But one man has told him no. And now all he can see is his vineyard that he doesn't have. At what point does disappointment become entitlement? Because wanting something is not unusual. But what happens when we believe that our position, the pain we've gone through, or just our desire means that this boundary should no longer apply to us? Remember, the vineyard is not Ahab's. Naboth had said no. Ahab, he cannot accept it. Then Jezebel, yep, she's back, finds him in bed, asks what's wrong. Ahab tells her Naboth refused to give him the vineyard. Important point, he does leave out Naboth's reason, right? He does not mention this God-given inheritance. He tells the story as though Naboth was merely being unreasonable. And then Jezebel answers, "Do you now reign over Israel?" I mean, in her view, kingship means Ahab, he should get whatever he wants. She tells him, "Go eat, cheer up. She will get him the vineyard." So when Jezebel uses the machinery of government, she writes letters in Ahab's name. She seals them with his seal. She sends them to the leaders in Naboth's city. She calls for the fast. She arranges false witnesses. They accuse Naboth of cursing God, cursing the king. They find him guilty, and Naboth is taken outside the city and stoned to death. This is not one of those secret murders in a dark alley we've seen in biblical stories before. This is organized injustice. So when Jezebel finally hears that Naboth's dead, then she goes and tells Ahab, "Get up, go take possession of the vineyard. It's yours." Ahab doesn't ask any questions. He just gets up and goes down. He didn't write the letters, but he accepts the result. He is the one who benefits from the injustice. And the text doesn't let him hide behind that distance between just his desire and this eventual Naboth's death. Because then the word of Yahweh comes back to Elijah. So if you can, I want you to try and picture this scene. It's one of the reasons I encourage you to read or listen to these chapters yourself. Elijah finds Ahab in the vineyard. He doesn't find him in the palace, not on the battlefield. It's in the place taken from a murdered man. Ahab, he's finally walked on the land he wanted. He's coveted. In his mind, the matter's settled. Paperwork's done. Naboth's gone. The vineyard's now his. Ahab is walking through the vines, pleased with himself. And then he looks up, noticing Elijah already waiting for him. And Elijah glances up and asks, "Have you murdered and also taken possession?" Ahab may have the royal seal. Those local leaders may have followed procedure. The witnesses may have spoken falsely in public. But none of that changes the truth. Naboth was murdered, and Ahab took possession. Power may try and control the official story, but it just cannot control what Yahweh sees. So Ahab asks Elijah, he says, "Have you found me, O my enemy?" And Elijah just answers, "Yeah, I found you." See, Ahab sees Elijah as the enemy. But Elijah didn't create the truth. He only speaks it. I mean, sometimes the person who tells us the truth, they just feel like the enemy because the truth has found us in the vineyard. Elijah announces judgment against Ahab's house. The chapter does not soften the seriousness of what had happened. Naboth is not forgotten. So Elijah presents the judgments of Yahweh. It's graphic, it's brutal. The dogs will feast. Please go read it. But then something surprising happens, right? Ahab, he tears his clothes, he puts on sackcloth, he fasts, he walks around dejected. And then Yahweh says to Elijah, he says, "Do you see how Ahab has humbled himself before me?" That line complicates the story. It doesn't erase Naboth. It doesn't undo the murder. It does not make Ahab innocent. It doesn't stop the consequences. The consequences will remain, albeit delayed. But God notices Ahab's humility, even here, even now. Because Ahab is deeply compromised. But he's also still capable of responding when confronted. These whole stories, they give us the whole person. And the whole person, they're just often much more uncomfortable than just having them be a simple hero or a simple villain. And then when we place chapters 20 and 21 together, these patterns become visible. Ahab, he receives mercy in battle. He receives truth from prophets. He receives power as king. And then again and again, he treats what has been placed in his hands as though it belongs to him alone. He releases Ben-Hadad according to his own judgment. He covets Naboth's vineyard. He accepts the benefits of Naboth's death. The issue is not only that Ahab has power, right? It's what desire does with power just when someone says no. And then God's mercy is not the same as God's approval. Because a victory in this story, they don't prove faithfulness. And possessing something after an injustice does not make it rightly theirs. Ahab, he had walked in the vineyard as though the story's finished. Elijah, he was already on the road. The king controls the land, does not control the truth. So please go, return to these chapters. Notice the company of unnamed prophets. Where God's work is often larger than the person we just happen to see. Notice those victories Ahab receives, and then ponder this one. Mercy can arrive before repentance. Notice Naboth, right? Let him be more than just the man who owned this vineyard. This is a faithful steward of the inheritance from God. Notice how Jezebel turns private desire into public injustice. Notice that Yahweh sees through the paperwork, through the witnesses, through the ceremony, through the royal seal. And then maybe carry this question. Can we benefit from an injustice and still claim we had no part in it? Talk about that amongst yourselves. I suspect that question is going to be a lot larger than just Ahab's vineyard. So as we leave chapter 21, Ahab's story is not finished. There's still one final chapter in the scroll of 1 Kings. Got another prophet, another battle, and another attempt to control the outcome. Oh, and a word from Yahweh that will not be managed by royal plans. So thank you for walking this Dusty Feet path with me. And until next time, keep asking questions. Keep noticing the people. Keep listening for the truth beneath the official story. And keep wandering with Dusty Feet. Shalom, shalom.